And go feast your eyes. Chefing up, cooking them pies. Leaving no slice, believe on a guy. Who in demand and who got supplies? You on the land, me I'm fly. Look at the miles, I be in skies. Right by my side, miss look at them thighs. Up in Dubai, you see us. Black man, black sand beaches. Yeah. Backhand if you slick speaking. Yeah. Cut off if that hand reaches. Right. Sucker, I ain't about y'all leeches.
Tony, I'm here with my boy Jay Focus.
What's happening, guys?
Hanging out in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. We had an amazing meal. So how was your trip here?
So I just got here, man. It's still like very, very fresh. I haven't got to experience a lot. And I don't know, I feel like I got bad luck because we got the clouds today, but you know, tomorrow it's probably gonna be nice and sunny. I'm looking forward to seeing some nice TZ women in bikinis. I have not experienced that yet. Now, Tony told me, he said, you know, you got to change your expectations. Right. He said, it's still conservative over here. So I'm going to see how true that is.
Yeah, man, it's going to be maybe a 3 out of 10 on the beach as far as sexiness, maybe 2 out of 10.
Okay.
It's going to be very homely, family-orientated type beach life, but it's a conservative nation. That's what you should expect. How about in Ethiopia? How is the beach scene in Ethiopia?
Ethiopia?
You've been around, yeah, you've been
you
around.
know it ain't no beaches in Ethiopia,
oh, man. Damn.
They landlocked. But I'm gonna tell you this. This is a top secret, man. Only for the Traveling Tony subscribers. If you want to go to the beach in Africa and see them yams, you want to see that nyash. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Angola, okay. Angola, they have a beach scene, which to me is the closest I've seen to Rio in Africa. Now, it's not quite Rio, but, you know, they letting it all hang out, if you get my drift. It's very liberal culture as far as that goes. You know, some people are looking for more of the conservative side of things. Some people want that party vibe or whatever. So I feel like one cool thing about Africa is that it's 54 countries. A lot of times in the States, in the West, we think of Africa as a continent. I mean, we think of Africa, as just one big country. When it's a continent, you know, it's actually varies a lot from place to place. Mexico has a different culture than the States, a different energy, different vibe. And the same thing in Africa. You could go from a place like Kenya, and then you could go to a place like Uganda, which is right next door. And they have some things in common, but other things, you know, not going to fly. And it's the same in Africa. Angola has that liberal beach scene, if you're looking for that. If you want more of a family atmosphere, it seems like Tanzania, Dar es Salaam at least, probably checks that box. Is that something you would agree with?
Yeah, I agree. But Ethiopia, so they don't have any beaches like Uganda? Like where
they don't have
lakes?
A coast, bro.
They don't have a lake?
Well, they
like
have lakes, but I don't
consider that?
Nah,
like
I don't think people lay out in like to really swim.
In Uganda they do though.
That's
Uganda,
true. But
do.
Ethiopia is quite different.
Yeah, it's very different.
It's different than almost anywhere. I think even as far as like the Horn of Africa goes, I think it's even different for that.
Right.
Compared to that. So
have you had any interest in Somalia or anything?
Not really.
Not really scary.
Keep it 100. I don't know about scary. It's just like nothing about it really appeals to me because it's a very like overtly Islamic culture.
Right.
I've been in Islamic countries before, but I think there is just like a different form of Islam, and you know where you got like the prayer call all the time, and like you're really going to feel out of place. I feel like if you're not a Muslim. I actually met a Somalian brother last year, and he was like, I guess, Somalian American, moved to the States when he was a little bit older. And I was asking him, you know, like, what would it be like if I went to your country and stuff? And he's just like, yeah, it's, you know, very traditional and kind of like dissuading me from wanting to visit. So I don't know. It's definitely not near the top of my list. And then you also have the language barrier too, because it's, I believe, Arabic and Somali, they have their own language. I don't think English is going to be spoken much. I do speak French. I think they speak French there as well as like an additional language, but I'm really not trying to deal with all that.
Nah.
Even Djibouti. So I almost went to Djibouti.
Ooh.
I was in Ethiopia earlier this year. Man, I'm losing track of my days and months. Y'all got to bear with me. I was in Ethiopia back in February and early March, and I thought about going to Djibouti, but if you leave Ethiopia, even if it's just for like 2 days, 3 days, when you come back, you're gonna have to pay a visa all over again, you know, because when you get there, you can get visa on arrival for 30 days. And when I got that, but if I would have went to Djibouti even for the weekend and came back, I would have had to pay that money again. And I was just like, I really don't want to go through all that. And then on top of that, like from what I've seen and heard, Djibouti is more or less just one big military base. You got French military has a base there, Chinese military has a base, American military has a base, British military has a base. So all you really see walking around the city is soldiers. And there's a guy, what's his name, Sly's Life. I don't know if you ever seen his content. Okay, he's a brother from Seattle or whatever. But anyway, he was there and he said when he landed, they asked him if he was military, you know, because he's like, you know, clean shaven, clean cut dude or whatever. He said, so I really wasn't trying to go to that environment. And then on top of that, it's kind of pricey from what I've heard. Like you're really not going to get a hotel in Djibouti for under $100 a night. That's going to be nice. Like, I mean, decent, not even nice, but you know what I'm saying? Like to a Western standard. So I was just like, I'm cool with Ethiopia while I was there.
That's why in the military, in the Air Force, people that were going to Djibouti, they got a lot of TDY money. Every day they're, is it TDY money? I forgot the name. I have to look it up. But their allowance was crazy compared to other places. Like in Japan, cost of living cola. Their cola was very high for Djibouti. That's very interesting.
You know, also in Addis, in the capital, there's a lot of embassies. They have, I think, more embassies than anywhere else in Africa. Maybe even more than South Africa has. Because the African Union is based in Addis Ababa. So like you'll just be walking down the street, like not even far from downtown or whatever, and you'll see like, oh, there's the Ukrainian embassy, there's the North Korean embassy, there's the Cuban embassy. And I guess they don't pick sides, so all the like communist and like anti-West countries have embassies, and then also all the Western countries have embassies in Addis. And I think because of all that foreign government money, because you know when you're a diplomat, like they give you unlimited cash, like that raises the price of a lot of the prime real estate in Addis. So once you get outside of like the primary parts of Addis, I think the prices go back to normal. But if you want to be like close to the malls, close to a lot of the nightlife and stuff, you're right next to the embassies and the embassy workers who, you know, they have those huge budgets.
Right.
So everything's inflated, like Airbnb and stuff. Like it would really be a lot cheaper. So every other city I've been to in Ethiopia, I've noticed way cheaper prices for stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say the same with Dar es Salaam plus the port. There's a lot of embassies here, so if you want to buy land here, it's very expensive in the Masaki, Oyster Bay areas. These are just Mikocheni is too expensive. That's where all the embassies and the VIP. There's diplomatic homes in these areas, like ex-presidents, like people of state, whatever, Department of Energy, all those people, they have homes here the government gives them.
So they could charge whatever.
Yeah, they could charge whatever for the land. The land is too expensive, in my opinion. So, do you like Africa overall so far? Out of the continents you've been to, what's your favorite continent so far to be as a black man?
Wow, that's a deep question. So, I've lived on 4 continents. I've lived in, obviously, the Americas, the U.S. I've lived in South America, I guess Latin America, since that's kind of a separate continent. I've lived in Europe, right? And then now Africa. So to compare those, obviously the States is home. That's where my family's at, etc. So that's my first perspective. Then Europe is very traditional. Even today, even with the technology and stuff, you'd be surprised how they're set in their ways in many parts of Europe. You know, once you get outside of the mega cities, things get very old school, and it's hard for them to change even business practices and things. They're just like, this is the way we've always done it. So I think the resistance to change in Europe can be a positive thing, but it's also a negative thing because it stops the innovation. It's why you notice most of the new corporations, most of the new technology, it's coming from the States, it's coming from Asia. It's not coming from Europe anymore, with very few exceptions. Africa, I think the energy and the youth is the potential there, because if you walk around Europe, most cities, especially once you get away from London or Madrid or Berlin, you'll notice people are old. People are older. You'll see 60-year-olds almost all over the place. The States is creeping up there, but not to the extent that you see it in Europe. Now, Africa is the opposite. You see so many young people everywhere. And it's really unfortunate that a lot of them, they're not employed, they don't have a lot to do. So I think living in Africa, the difference is that the sky is the limit and that there are more opportunities. Whereas in Europe and in America, it's kind of like almost anything you can think of, it's already been done. And yes, you can compete, but you're competing with people that are so entrenched and that have so many connections in whatever avenue that we're talking about. Versus out here, there's a lot of niches that haven't been filled and they're just waiting for someone to step into. And then as far as like growing your own family, you're gonna have a lot more cooperation when it comes to establishing that. The women and the laws and the environment just overall is gonna be more pro whatever you're trying to do. So that's kind of how I would compare the different places.
Very interesting.
And I guess South America, it's leaning more towards how things are in the States. Maybe they're slightly younger than in the States, but definitely doesn't compare to what you're going to get in Africa as far as, like I said, being able to be a single man and saying, okay, I'm going to start my destiny like this. I'm going to set up my family like this. I want to have this type of legacy. You're never going to have it as easy as a black man, especially, as you are going to have it in Africa.
So how were you received as a black man in Asia?
In Asia, so I never actually lived in Asia. I've spent some time in Asia in about 8 different countries, and they're all very, very different.
Okay.
But I will say that I was never outright disrespected in Asia. I will say that.
Okay.
They are very much about harmony.
Okay.
And if you don't interrupt the harmony in the environment, they may not love you, but they will show you a basic level of respect. And even a higher level of respect, I would say, than you'll get in the States, unless they kind of know who you are. You know what I'm saying? Depending on where you're at, etc. Now, you're never going to blend in Asia. I don't care if your great-grandson is there, unless, you just mix and mix and mix till the point that he don't even look like you whatsoever. Unless you do that, yeah, your great-grandson is still never going to be seen as an Asian person. And so that's something you got to wrap your head around. There's expats, white, black, you name it, who've lived in places like Japan for 30 years. And they speak the language fluently, they're married to a local, and they're always still going to be an outsider. There's still going to be a ceiling to how far you're going to be able to integrate, how much you're going to be seen as somebody who is part of this place, not just a passerby, not somebody just coming through to do business or what have you. So that's more or less my interpretation of Asia. Asia is a very cool place to live. It's going to vary by country, how you're going to be treated. I think China is on one extreme. I've never been there, but I've heard kind of the worst stories coming from China. And then I guess on the opposite extreme, maybe you could say Japan, just because we've had a presence there for such a long time that they can kind of stratify, like, are you that type of black dude or are you this type of black dude? And I'm going to put you in the right box, based on how you carry yourself. Whereas in some other places, it's kind of like, y'all are all the same. And that's all we're thinking about, right? So I would
think China would probably fall in that category where they can't really identify what type of black person you are. So
sure.
It's just all black people.
Yeah.
I was going to go to China, but I was dissuaded as well. They were saying, at the time I was in Japan, they were saying in China, they charge people for clean air. I'm like, I don't want to deal with no bullshit. I'm not into, I don't want to, I'm going on vacation to have fun, not be frustrated.
Sure.
So,
and then you need a visa as well.
Yeah.
It's not a place you could just pull up to. Because we're kind of spoiled in the States. Like, if you just are used to traveling Latin America and the Caribbean, you can just show up. You don't have to do anything. Whereas, depending on the country, especially in Africa, a little bit in Asia, you do have to do some due diligence. You do have to do some research of, okay, what are the requirements before I come? Do I need to show this? Do I need to, pre-plan? Do I need to make an appointment at an embassy? That kind of a thing.
Like Uganda, you can't just show up in Uganda. You have to do it beforehand. They'll be upset.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can try
finesse
to
your
pay,
way.
yeah, you could pay your way out of it, but it's going to cost you.
Yeah,
It's
and then
not
you're
really
in a
worth
bad
it.
position.
Yeah, you're in a bad position. You're
Yeah.
not in a place you can negotiate.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, you're at their mercy.
at their mercy. I don't like
Yeah.
that, and they're gonna make you pay for it, 100%.
Yeah, that's one thing I will say as well, is that Africa to travel in is not cheap whatsoever. Do not believe the hype. For $1 a day, you could feed a village, man. That might have been true in '82. I don't know. I wasn't alive back then. But these days, nah. Unless you're trying to live 100% off the economy like a local, and as a tourist, you're not doing that. You know, it's different if you're coming here to set up something and you're working for an NGO. Then maybe you'll be living in a village. But 99% of the people watching this video, when you show up, you're going to want to have a tourist experience. You're going to want to stay in a nice part of town. You're going to want to have access to Western style food, and you're going to pay for that privilege more than you would pay in Asia, more than you would pay in Colombia. So just don't come here thinking it's going to be cheap. Now, if you just pick one country and you're going to stay in that country, you do your research, you can minimize those costs. But if you're going to do it like me and you're going to hit various countries for, X amount of time and just kind of go with the flow, you're not going to save a lot of money, is what I'm saying. So just prepare, have your wallet ready, and enjoy. Because one thing I will say about Africa is you get what you pay for. That's across the board.
100%.
You might see a room for $40 and you see a room for $50 and you're like, man, I'm trying to save $10 a night. Okay. What you're not going to know is that room that's $10 cheaper, you might have a leaky faucet. You might have a toilet that doesn't flush. You might have no generator. You might be in the dark. You know what I'm saying? You might have roaches. You might have ants. And I could go on and on and on. I don't want to scare y'all from going to the continent. Y'all should go, absolutely. But go with the right mentality. Go with your money up. I'm not saying you got to come out and ball out, but no, you are going to pay more than you would pay in the Colombias, more than you would pay in the Thailands. That's across the board, as a tourist. Now, if you're living there, that's a different calculation. So we're not talking about that. I'm talking about as a tourist.
Okay, great. Okay, one last question. Do you consider yourself a passport bro?
Is that going to be the intro to the video? That's going to be like the leader. So, do you consider yourself a passport bro? So I get asked this question more often than I would expect. I think the biggest time I got asked this was I went on O'Shea's channel on his show?
Kinganda?
Kinganda, exactly.
Okay.
I was going to say the dating show, but yeah, I was on both, so I was getting it mixed up. But I was on Kinganda, and Jonita, she asked me, she's like, so are you a passport bro? And I don't consider myself a passport bro for several reasons. Number one, these terms can change. These terms can start off as one thing and then turn into something else. I give you guys a perfect example. 10 years ago, the word woke didn't mean what woke means today. These words usually start in the black community, and then people run with them, and they can mean whatever they want them to mean. And they can take things that were positive and make them negative or whatever. So because of that, I would never consider myself a passport bro. But even before that, I've been traveling since I was 18 years old internationally. Obviously, I was traveling domestically before that. So because of that, no, I would never consider myself a passport bro. That being said, I understand the term. I understand why there are people who identify themselves as passport bros. I don't have a problem with people identifying themselves as passport bros. I 100% get the mentality behind the ideology that you're not being respected or appreciated where you're at, so you're gonna go where you're treated best. And for a lot of people, where they're being treated best isn't the States. So as far as that aspect of it, yeah, I 100% support those who would consider themselves passport bros. Now, when you put extra things on top of that, which everyone has their own definition beyond that, then, I gotta step back a little bit because I don't know whose definition we're working with.
Right.
Well,
that's good points right there. There's no clear definition for what a passport bro is. So many different things. You don't keep up with that red pill, blue pill, yellow pill.
Nah, I'm aware of it vaguely,
yeah,
but it's not something that I have like my feet deep into. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really want to speak on it when I'm far from an expert.
That's why I tell people too, a lot of times, us expats, we're so far removed from what's going on in America, we can't identify anymore.
True.
You agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So
yeah, we're seeing things through a completely different lens.
We don't have the struggle of dealing with, you know, non-compliant women and stuff like that. So even me, like in the States, if you called me a feminist, I would have been offended. But now I could say I do advocate for women to be treated well.
Sure.
Because of the women I encountered in these different various countries. They're very friendly, very polite, and I always wish the best for them.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's the interview. Thanks guys for watching. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jay Focus.
All right, man. I appreciate y'all. Until next time.
Next time. Thank you.